In her world, names were weapons. He came with none, and left with hers. The arena roared with heat and light, an ancient bowl of obsidian and steel, suspended in the upper stratosphere of Virex Prime. Every noble house had sent its heir to witness the ritual duel, but only one stood inside the ring. Princess Ziara of the High House Vornix. Tall, regal, wrapped in silver-threaded combat silk that shimmered with every breath. Her skin glowed faintly with the soft pulse of her species' lineage, a bioluminescent pattern across her collarbone and temples. Her silver eyes locked onto the challenger before her, cold and amused. A human. Broad-shouldered. Sunburnt. No armor, just worn fatigues and a sheathed blade strapped across his back like he hadn't gotten the memo. His name was Cade Rowan. No titles. No house. Just a man. Just human. Ziara tilted her head, stepping forward, voice amplified across the arena by the comm rings woven into her braid. I expected a beast. I see a farmhand with a sword. A ripple of laughter surged through the stands, nobles, courtiers, and diplomats smirking behind jeweled masks. Her ladies-in-waiting whispered gleefully, their crystalline fans fluttering. Cade didn't respond. He simply looked at her with the stillness of someone who'd seen real war. Then he unsheathed his blade, dull steel earth-made, and planted it tip-first into the ground. Ziara raised an eyebrow. No opening stance? No honor words. He finally spoke. You said I could win you with a name. She smiled wickedly. Ah yes, our old game. If a suitor can guess the true name of a daughter of the house, she becomes his bondmate. But no one ever has. Because our names are sealed in flame and code, forgotten even to us until we choose to remember. She stepped closer now, circling him like a feline around a dog on its last breath. Guess my name, Terran. Whisper it and I'll belong to you in soul and skin. Fail, and you die here. The crowd hushed. The stakes were now more than ceremonial. This wasn't just spectacle. This was an insult turned into ritual. Cade's face remained unreadable. Then he leaned forward almost casually and whispered, so only she could hear. I'll wait until you remember it yourself. That stopped her. Just for a second. Something ancient stirred in her chest. Then she scoffed. Clever ape. She turned her back on him, stepped to her mark and raised her hand. The gong struck. The duel began. Blades would flash. Flesh would break. But even before the first strike, something had already changed. Because unlike everyone else, he hadn't tried to own her name. He'd promised to wait for it. And that was the most dangerous move of all. Long before Ziara stood in the arena, her name had already been erased. Not forgotten. Erased. Among the Vornix and all highborn of the Celestial Concord, one's true name was not given at birth but awakened. Buried in layers of genetic encoding and psychic encryption, it lay dormant until the bearer proved worthy. A star name they called it, a sacred key to status, power, and selfhood. Once spoken aloud to another, it formed an eternal bond. A vow stronger than law. A mistake could mean servitude. A misstep, marriage. Which is why no one guessed. Why no one dared. Until Cade Rowan. Cade hadn't come to the tournament for blood or glory. He wasn't one of Earth's new gladiators, the kind that turned post-war diplomacy into sport. He had been a soldier once. Then a mercenary. Now, reluctantly, a peace envoy, assigned to the Vornix as part of the Terran de-escalation treaty. His job was to shake hands, not throw punches. But the Vornix didn't care for handshakes. They held rites of observation. A series of symbolic duels between nobles and guests, where status was tested, alliances forged, and humiliation broadcasted across 10 star systems. Earth sent Cade because he was low risk, a non-political, non-threatening participant. Just a face in the Terran file. No one expected him to challenge the princess. He hadn't really. She'd chosen him. They called it tradition, he'd muttered to his translator before the duel. I call it theater. The translator, a dry, one-eyed crustacean named Grib, had simply shrugged. Then act well. Or die funny. Still, Cade had read the briefings. The legend of the star name fascinated him. How these people gave up control of their truest identity, locked it away behind ancestral encryption, and only offered it when love, trust, or surrender demanded it. To Terrans, names were labels. To the Vornix, they were destinies. And Ziara's? She was the last daughter of House Vornix, bred from 9 generations of star blood, trained from birth in ritual combat and cosmic politics. Her star name, when awakened, would not just define her, it would control her lineage, her marriage, and her empire. So when she'd offered him that cruel little dare, guess my true name and I'll be yours, she never expected him to understand the stakes. She expected a joke, a guess, an insult. Instead, he'd whispered, "I'll wait until you remember it yourself." And just like that, a soldier became something else. Not a threat, not a suitor, but a variable. The kind her people didn't plan for. Now, in the days following the duel, neither had requested another match. By tradition, they were to be placed in diplomatic proximity for 7 cycles. Close quarters, neutral zone, no weapons. Observation. It was meant as a cooling period. But between them, something had already begun to burn. The air in the arena shimmered with charged anticipation. Ziara stood poised, her twin phase blades humming in each hand. They glowed violet, plasma-sharp, self-adjusting, mapped to her neural impulses. They were the pride of her house, designed to match every movement with deadly elegance. Across from her, Cade Rowan held a single blade. No pulse, no shine, no tech. Just old earth steel, scuffed and matte, the edge maintained by hand, the leather grip worn bare. He stood with his weight uneven, knees slightly bent, like he was bracing for a brawl, not a ceremony. To the Vorniks in the crowd he looked ridiculous. To Ziara, he looked wrong. Not fearful. Not rehearsed. Just ready in a way she couldn't read. The gong echoed. She launched first. Her strikes were pure rhythm, years of perfected form and momentum, a storm of arcs and spinning cuts meant to disarm, disorient, dominate. Cade ducked the first, slid under the second, parried the third with the flat of his blade, crudely but effectively. And then he grinned. That grin. Infuriating. Human. Alive. Ziara snarled and increased tempo. Her blades blurred, forming crescents of violet light as she pressed him across the arena. He gave ground, but not weakness. Every step back was calculated. He let her exhaust herself. Until he stepped in. A shoulder drop. A pivot. A brutal swing. Steel met plasma in a flash of sparks. One of her blades was knocked free, skidding across the floor. The crowd gasped. She blinked, disoriented, recalibrating. He didn't strike. He waited. Taunting? No, inviting. She lunged again, spinning with a defensive slash meant to reset the rhythm. Cade caught it on the flat of his sword and twisted, forcing her wrist to lock awkwardly. In one move, he disarmed her completely. Her last blade clattered beside her first. Silence descended. Ziara stood, chest heaving, sweat beading on her skin, her pride cracking beneath the weight of stillness. Cade could have ended it. One blow. A symbolic touch to the throat. Claim victory. Instead, he stepped forward, knelt slightly and leaned close, just enough so only she could hear. You wear a beautiful lie in place of a name. Her eyes widened. He straightened, turned his back to her, and walked toward the edge of the ring. The high lords in the gallery rose in confusion. Her attendants called out in alarm. But Ziara stood frozen. The chamber was carved into the lower rings of the arena, part cell, part suite, and entirely ceremonial. Walls of pale crystal pulsed gently with temperature-regulating energy. No weapons, no communication links, just 2 beds, a shared table, and an atmosphere thick with unspoken challenge. The Vorniks called it a proximity exchange, a cultural dialogue pod for rival representatives to learn from one another through forced proximity. Cade called it what it was. A really fancy prison cell. Ziara didn't respond the first day. She sat with perfect posture, back straight, hands folded on her lap like she was still on display. He noticed she hadn't even removed the intricate combat bindings from her wrists, silver coils that once glowed in battle but now looked more like shackles. Comfortable? He'd asked casually, leaning back on the edge of his bunk. Her only reply was a flick of the eyes. By the second day, silence had evolved. She broke it first. You didn't take the victory. Why? He shrugged. Didn't need it. That would be the first time a human didn't reach for glory when handed it. He tilted his head. I don't care about glory. I care about meaning. She studied him then, as if the word meaning had foreign weight. He stood, poured 2 cups of steaming stimulant from the room's synthesizer unit, and offered her one. She accepted it after a pause. Their fingers touched for just a moment. Her skin was cool. That night, they sat across from each other, table between them. Neither armored. Neither posturing. Just 2 survivors of systems that had no room for softness. She asked about Earth, its oceans, its fractured history. He asked about the Starborn War, the one her people never mentioned in public. She said nothing at first. But later, after a pause, she whispered, My brother died in the first breach. I was 12. Cade didn't offer condolences. He just nodded and said, "Mine died on Callisto base. I was 17. For a moment their silences touched. Something passed between them, recognition of the same wound etched in different alphabets. The next day, Ziara found Cade standing at the edge of the habitat dome, arms crossed, watching artificial stars flicker across the simulated sky. "Do humans ever shut up?" she asked dryly. "Only the boring ones," he shot back. That was the moment it happened. The laugh. It was soft, sudden, and utterly genuine. Ziara blinked as if surprised by the sound coming out of her own mouth. He turned, smiling just enough. "There. Not so terrifying when you do that. Don't get used to it. Too late." She rolled her eyes, but didn't stop smiling. On the fourth cycle of their proximity exchange, the overseers issued a new harmonization protocol. Another Vornix euphemism. This one meant, throw them into a death maze and call it bonding. The fire hall, an ancient trial chamber beneath the arena, was designed as a test of coordination and cultural trust. 2 participants. 1 way out. Neither could succeed alone. Every noble house trained their heirs to survive it. Cade had only read about it in the briefings. Something about lava vents and collapsing floors. "Tell me again how this is peaceful diplomacy," he muttered. Ziara was already calibrating her wrist console. "It's symbolic. Shared struggle breeds synthesis. Funny, we usually use tea for that." The entrance sealed behind them with a hiss. The fire hall was aptly named. Glowing veins of magma pulsed beneath the semi-transparent floor. The air shimmered with heat. Obsidian pillars rose in random intervals, and overhead, massive gears turned like the insides of some forgotten god machine. Ahead, shifting tiles formed a narrow bridge across the chamber. The path wasn't obvious. Missteps would mean a quick, molten death. Ziara strode forward confidently, eyes locked on the pulsing runes embedded in the floor. "I've trained for this since I was 8, she said. "Follow my pattern. Step only where I step." Cade did. 4-5 paces. Then the floor beneath her glowed red. And collapsed. She fell fast, too fast to scream. He caught her wrist with both hands, bracing himself on a nearby beam. Her weight nearly dragged him down, but he locked his arms and held. For a second there was only her breath, sharp, shallow, and the hiss of magma below. "Your tech's offline," he grunted. "It shouldn't be." "No kidding." Her fingers tightened around his arm. "I can't climb." "Then don't." With a grunt, Cade hauled her up and over the ledge, stumbling backward as she collapsed into him. Her body crashed into his, armorless now, flesh against flesh, and for the first time they were not fighting, not fencing, not measuring. They were simply close. She breathed against his collarbone, hands trembling slightly as they pressed to his chest. He didn't move. Didn't let go. After a long moment she pulled back, just enough to meet his eyes. "You could have let me fall. I don't drop people. Even ones who mock you?" He gave a faint, tired smile. "Especially those. You'd never let me live it down." A flicker of amusement danced behind her eyes. Then she said softer, "You touched me." He nodded. "I did. I didn't allow it. You also didn't fall into lava." Silence. Then, just barely, she whispered, "Thank you." The fire hall had many endings. Some left through the gate. Some through the smoke. But Cade and Ziara emerged through something else entirely. A crack in the wall. She'd spotted it as they rested on a final platform. An ancient seam of silver and obsidian, pulsing faintly beneath centuries of ceremonial ash. Curiosity overrode protocol. Cade pried it open with his knife. What they found wasn't treasure. It was a chamber sealed in silence. Dustless. Preserved. And at its heart, a pedestal. Upon it, a memory crystal. Not modern. Not official. Ziara recognized the house seal etched on the side, an ancestral glyph, predating the Concord by generations. The data was encoded in ancestral layers. Voice-locked. Gene-locked. It pulsed when she stepped near. Then it spoke. The projection flickered to life, grainy, ghost-like. A tall figure in formal robes. Her great-grandmother. The message was clear. Painfully so. If this is seen, it means the lie has lasted too long. The truth, we struck first. Earth never fired. The orbital assault was preemptive, an attempt to contain what we feared. Not what we knew. Ziara's breath caught. We erased the records. Told our children it was retaliation. But it was ambition. Pride. I watched our council vote. I voted too. And then we buried the truth in ceremony. The image degraded. Static buzzed. If you are starborn and you still have a name, remember this. Peace will not come from glory. It must come from admission. From atonement. Then the crystal flickered one last time. And cracked. Right down the center. Ziara didn't move. Her skin had paled to a dull green-blue. Kate stepped toward her. You okay? No, she whispered. She turned away from the pedestal, shoulders trembling. My whole life, we were told humans attacked first. That we were victims. Defenders of light against unprovoked aggression. Her voice cracked. I trained. Fought. Bled. For a lie. Kate didn't say I told you so. He didn't speak at all. He just waited. Eventually she looked up. There were tears in her eyes, but they didn't fall. You still carry that ugly steel blade, she said bitterly. No plasma. No elegance. Just rawness. He nodded. It's real. It doesn't pretend to be more than it is. She stared at him. Maybe that's why we feared you. Because of the sword? No, she said quietly. Because you didn't pretend. Ziara stood on the observation deck of the diplomatic quarters, watching Cade through the glass partition as he slept. He looked too human. Not monstrous, not glorious. Just solid. Scarred. Real. And that, more than any weapon, was what made him dangerous. Behind her the air shifted. A soft buzz, the scent of ozone. Incoming hologram. The image shimmered into focus, slender, coiled like a predator beneath ceremonial silk. Counselor Thrax. Her father's mouthpiece. Her house's cold blade. Ziara, he said smoothly, not bowing. I trust the proximity protocol has been enlightening. She narrowed her eyes. You've been watching. I've been advising. And what I've seen troubles me. She folded her arms, voice clipped. Because I didn't kill him? No. Because you haven't cut him off. The room felt colder despite the heat-laced architecture. You were never meant to bond with the Terran, he continued. He was a symbol. A sparring partner. Disposable. He's more than that. He's a liability. Silence. Then Thrax's voice dropped. You've touched hands? Shared breath. He saw the crystal. Ziara's pulse jumped. You knew about it. He didn't deny it. It was left as insurance. Not for outsiders. Not for him. She stepped forward. Everything it said is a threat to unity. No. It's the truth. Thrax exhaled through his teeth as if scolding a child. Then preserve unity with action. He's soft now. Distracted. A meal shared, a drink laced, and this entanglement ends before it shames the throne. It took her a full breath to realize what he meant. Her voice was ice. You want me to poison him. Call it correction. She looked down at the small velvet capsule he transmitted. It materialized on the desk with a polite chime. A beautiful little box. Inside, cerulean powder. Undetectable to human physiology. Fatal. A diplomatic cleaning. He'll never feel it, Thrax said. You'll be free to claim your inheritance. We'll classify the incident as cross-species rejection. Tragic. Politically useful. Ziara stared at the box. Her hand did not move. Behind her, Cade shifted in sleep. Muttered something under his breath. Her name maybe. Or just a sound. But it was soft. Human. You would make me a widow to a lie, she whispered. A widow or an exile, Thrax replied coldly. You choose. When the transmission ended, she remained motionless. Then, slowly she picked up the box, held it, opened it, and walked to the edge of the observation deck. With one decisive flick, she scattered the powder into the void between stars. No hesitation. No regret. I'd rather be disowned, she murmured, than dishonored. The order came in during the 5th cycle. Formal. Polite. Veiled like all executions. The Terran representative, Cade Rowan, was to be removed from proximity assignment and returned to Earth. Effective immediately. Reason, emotional compromise detected. Mission objectives at risk. Ziara read it 3 times. Each word burned hotter than the last. He was packing when she found him. No protest, no appeal. Just quiet resignation. I guess I lasted longer than expected, he said with a half smile, shoving a ration pouch into a worn bag. She didn't answer. Just stared at him jaw tight. You could say something, he added. I am deciding whether to burn a future for a man who sleeps with his boots on, she muttered. That got a laugh from him. A real one. I knew there was a reason you liked me. That night, guards came. 4 Vornik security agents, clad in obsidian armor, arrived at their shared quarters. Ziara stood in the center of the room, draped in her diplomatic gown, every line of her posture noble and still. Step aside, princess, one said. I can't, she replied simply. It is not a request. Then consider this treason. They never saw the stun pulse coming. She moved like lightning, 2 quick strikes from her palm band, a third sweeping blast across the doorframe. Cade had dropped his bag by then, grabbed the backup blade from beneath his cot, and followed her through the smoke. Sirens howled. Emergency protocols kicked in. But no one expected her to be the fugitive. The docking bay was chaos, shimmering force fields flickering, warning drones flitting like angry wasps. Ziara sprinted ahead, cloak tearing as she dove into the launch control pit. Cade covered her, deflecting a stun round with a sheet of metal plating. Any ship in particular? He called. One that still has fuel. They found it, a sleek diplomatic courier, small and fast, meant for planetary jumps. Perfect. Ziara hotwired the ignition. The hangar shield flickered. Then the stars opened. And they were gone. They didn't speak for an hour. Not until they'd reached dark space, far from the sensors, tucked into the gravitational shadow of a dead moon. Cade stood near the aft viewport, shirt half torn, arms scratched. She watched him from the pilot's chair, legs curled under her, face glowing faintly in the soft blue cabin light. Why? He finally asked. Ziara leaned her head back against the wall. My people asked me to kill you, she said. He blinked. She added quietly. But you never once asked me to be less than I am. Silence. Then he sat beside her. Close but not too close. Now what? She closed her eyes. Now we breathe. The ship drifted in silent orbit above a nameless rock, far from any patrol lanes. The emergency lighting inside pulsed gently, cool blues and pale golds, painting soft shadows on metal walls. Cade sat on the edge of the bunk, shirt peeled halfway off, blood drying in a jagged trail across his ribs. The blast graze from the hangar had torn more than fabric. The wound still wept, angry and raw. Ziara knelt in front of him, unwrapping a sterile patch of synth fiber, her fingers stained faintly with crimson. You should have said something, she murmured. You were busy stealing a ship. Next time say something, she snapped. He chuckled, winced immediately. Try not to laugh. You're perforated. She activated the sterilizer, a small field emitter that hissed quietly as it passed over the wound. Then she applied the synth flesh, hand steady but slow. Her fingers brushed against his chest. His heart thudded beneath her palm, steady, strong, human. She paused. The contact lingered. Not clinical. Not accidental. Just present. You're trembling, he said softly. No, she whispered. I'm thinking. She didn't pull away. Her thumb traced an old scar near his collarbone. A faded, ugly line. Not made in a duel. She didn't ask what caused it. Instead she finally spoke. Why don't you fear me? Cade looked at her, not flinching from the question. Because I've already seen you. You've seen my face. My anger. My fighting stance. No, he said. I saw you kneeling in the fire hall, shaking from the heat. I saw you staring at the crystal like your soul had cracked. His voice dropped. And I saw you throw the poison away, when no one else was watching. She closed her eyes. Her hands now rested fully on his chest as if grounding herself. I was taught to lead through image. To rule through perfection. We weren't allowed to break. He smiled. You broke beautifully. She let out a half laugh, half breath, wet and tired. Do all humans flirt during field surgery? Only with royalty. Silence followed. But it wasn't empty. It was full of breath and warmth and unsaid things. She finally opened her eyes. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For not pretending I'm invincible. His reply was simple. You're not. You're better than that. The cockpit of the stolen courier had become their sanctum. Ziara reclined in the co-pilot's seat, neural relay crown pulsing softly around her temples, strands of data light flowing across the holo-display before her like drifting silk. Cade stood behind her, arms crossed, watching lines of alien script cascade through the air. Still no match, he asked. No full strand, she replied, voice tense. Just fragments. Too clean. Too symmetrical. Like it was rewritten. She nodded, jaw clenched. Overwritten. Purposefully. Surgical. She reached for another interface node, connecting it directly to the bioport beneath her collar. The display flared. There it was. A sealed subroutine, buried beneath layers of ancestral encryption. Marked, Nomen root // access level, suppressed at birth. Ziara inhaled sharply. The interface pulsed red as it tried to read what was never meant to be read. And then unlocked. A single string of sound. One syllable. Beautiful. Unfamiliar. Hers. Her hands went cold. She disconnected the relay. The neural crown dropped into her lap like dead weight. Cade leaned in. What was it? Her voice shook. It wasn't a name. It was mine. She turned to him, eyes wide, brimming. They deleted it when I was born. Burned it out of the records. Replaced it with something optimized. Something easier to chant in a war rally. Her fists trembled in her lap. I never had a choice. I was raised to lead, to fight, to carry the voice of the house. But I never even knew who I was before they chose my mask. Cade knelt beside her seat, resting one hand over hers. Now you do. But it's just a sound. A stranger's echo. No, he said. It's a key. You just haven't opened the right door yet. She broke then. The tension shattered all at once, and the first sob escaped, guttural, raw, as if something deeper than breath had come loose inside her. Cade said nothing. He pulled her gently into his arms, wrapping around her like a shield. She didn't resist. Her forehead pressed against his shoulder. Her whole frame shook. There was no ceremony left, no rank, no titles. Only grief. Grief for the name never spoken. The girl never allowed to exist. The woman built to be a symbol. They stayed like that, tangled in silence, the holo display flickering with soft light. Eventually her voice returned, hoarse but steady. Do humans ever lose themselves? All the time, he whispered. But we're stubborn. We keep building new versions. Sometimes from pain. She nodded against him. I want to build one. You're already doing it. The capital ring of Virex Prime loomed like a jeweled crown in orbit, elegant, cold, calculating. Ziara had always thought it beautiful. Now it felt like a cage. The stolen diplomatic vessel had broadcast their surrender an hour before docking. Ziara had insisted she wouldn't return under pretense. She would stand before the council with her name, her truth, and her choice. But the moment they stepped onto the marble platform of the landing tier, they were surrounded. Guards. Ministers. Priests in starlit robes. And at the center, her father. High Lord Vadrix Vornix. He looked exactly as she remembered, tall, iron-backed, voice like a sword drawn from ice. You bring shame on this house, he said to her without greeting, and a disease into its heart. Cade stood beside her, quiet. I bring truth, Ziara answered, chin high. You built an empire on a lie. And now it trembles because one Terran refused to play the part you wrote for him. The nobles around them flinched at her tone. But not her father. His eyes slid to Cade. So you believe he understands us? No, Cade said before she could answer. But I understand her. That did it? Vadrix raised his hand. Then prove it in blood. A roar echoed from the ceremonial court below. The duel of honor. An ancient rite. One rarely invoked. But now summoned like an execution. Ziara's face drained of color. No. Father, no. This isn't honor, it's punishment. The rite is invoked, he said coldly. You cannot unring the bell. She stepped forward. Then I invoke sanctuary, diplomatic immunity. He's under protection. Vadrix turned to the ministers. You forfeited that the moment you crossed the stars with him. You made him your champion. Now let him fight. Cade didn't protest. Didn't flinch. He simply placed a hand on Ziara's arm. It's all right. No, she whispered. It's not. This is a rigged blood sport. Their champion will kill you. He smiled. But at least it'll be honest. Not poison. Not protocol. Cade. He looked at her, eyes unwavering. I won't run from what they are. Because you're not running from who you are anymore. She felt her breath catch. His words anchored her, cut through the noise, the robes, the pressure. Still, her heart pounded as the guards escorted him to the arena. She watched him go. Watched her father raise his hand in ceremony. And whispered to the stars. If he falls, I will never kneel again. The arena beneath the throne was older than any living noble. Forged before the Concord. Before the great treaties. A ring of black stone and glass, where inheritance was decided not by words, but by blood. Cade stood at its center, stripped of armor, holding a dull ceremonial blade barely sharper than a kitchen knife. No pulse steel. No neural sync. Just metal and instincts. Across from him, the champion. A cybernetic behemoth, nearly 3 meters tall. Body spliced with wartech. Muscles reinforced with servo fibers. One eye replaced by a targeting lens, spine armored in scaled alloy. Its every breath was a hiss of pressure release. Cade spat blood to the side. Yeah. Real fair fight. The crowd said nothing. Watching. Waiting. Ziara stood high above in the honor box, fists clenched at her sides, unable to stop this by decree or plea. Her father watched in silence, satisfied. The gong struck. The beast charged. The first strike nearly ended it. Cade dodged, barely, rolled under a crushing hammer fist that cratered the stone. He slashed across the side, but his blade skittered off metal plating. The champion turned, faster than expected, elbowed him hard across the jaw. Cade hit the floor. Art. The champion didn't taunt. Just advanced. Efficient. Ruthless. Machine-trained. Cade coughed and got up. Again. And again. Ziara watched with horror as the beast began cornering him, her heart thudding with helpless fury. Cade was outmatched. Outarmed. But not outthought. Because Cade wasn't fighting it. He was studying it. Third time the champion lunged, Cade fainted. Rolled left instead of right. The monster overcorrected, its cybernetic limb twitching, lagging a fraction. Cade smiled through a split lip. Servo delay on left side. Probably overcompensated from a spinal link. He ducked under the next punch, jabbed his blade into the champion's thigh, between plates, then twisted. Sparks flew. The champion roared. Cade jumped back but not fast enough. The monster slammed its fist into his ribs. Bones cracked. He flew into the arena wall. Ziara gasped. Didn't breathe. Didn't blink. Cade slid to the ground, coughing, blood now. But he stood. Again. This time when the champion charged, Cade met it halfway. Low angle. Blade reversed. He drove the hilt into the left knee, then leapt, grabbed onto the monster's back. It spun. Too late. He wrapped an arm around its neck, jammed the ceremonial blade into the sensory jack just below the targeting lens. Static. Oh. Collapse. The monster dropped to its knees, twitching, malfunctioning, eyes flickering. Cade slid off its back just as it toppled face first into the stone. Silence. Then shocked, involuntary applause. He didn't celebrate. Just stood there, swaying, blood running down his side. Looked up at the gallery. At her. Ziara. Their eyes locked. He gave her the smallest nod. Then collapsed. Cade lay broken on the blackstone. The arena was still in stunned silence. Even the High Council didn't speak. No protocols covered this outcome. Ziara didn't wait for permission. She ran. Down the ceremonial stairs. Across the scorched stone floor. Past the still smoking body of the fallen champion. She dropped to her knees beside him, her fingers trembling as they touched his bloodied face. Cade. He blinked slowly. A breath escaped, shallow and cracked. You're insane, she whispered, brushing hair from his forehead. Beautiful, reckless, stubborn. His hand found hers. Weak but deliberate. And then, he pulled her close, lips barely moving. He whispered something. One word. A sound like starlight cracking. A name. Not Ziara. Something deeper. Older. Chu. She froze. The moment he said it, her breath stopped. The air itself rippled. Her pupils dilated, irises flaring with the subtle glow of inherited code. The interface under her skin, normally dormant, awakened. It reacted. As if a lock had found its key. A pulse of blue light traced the veins beneath her throat. Her neural imprint lit in cascading symbols, glyphs that hadn't been seen in generations. Her body trembled. Because the name he spoke wasn't one she'd told him. Wasn't in any file. Wasn't in her public record. It was the name she'd heard only in dreams. The name erased before she could speak it. It wasn't just sound. It was recognition. How? She whispered, voice barely audible. Cade's lips moved again, slower now. Didn't guess. He smiled barely. Just knew. The sensors embedded in her ceremonial robes screamed warnings. Her blood pressure surged. Her genetic markers spiked. She was experiencing a sacred event. One no Vornix had undergone in over a century. Starbond initiation. Recognition of truth. Of chosen connection. By tradition, it required an exact match, a soul-to-soul resonance through shared knowing. It couldn't be faked. It couldn't be forced. And he had found it. Tears blurred her vision. Not of pain. Of awe. You weren't supposed to see me, she choked out. He exhaled, nearly laughing. I saw you before you did. The attending priests had stood from their box now, shocked, murmuring. The council stirred. Her father gripped the edge of his throne, stunned. None of them mattered. Ziara leaned down and pressed her forehead to Cade's. She closed her eyes and said the name aloud. What? Softly. The ancient protocol accepted it. The glyphs surged down her spine, across her wrists, across his skin. Link complete. The council chamber was a storm of voices. Dozens of nobles, robed, augmented, ringed with the symbols of their houses, shouted across marble tiers. Half called for Cade's execution, citing breach of protocol, bloodline impurity, cultural violation. The others, younger or quieter, murmured of legacy, prophecy, and change. And Ziara stood in the center of it all. Tall, unbowed, between Cade and the throne. He leaned against the carved wall behind her, his tunic soaked in blood but his eyes sharp. Watching. Ready. But not intervening. He knew. This wasn't his fight anymore. It was hers. You defy your house, her father growled from the high seat. You shame the inheritance of Vornix. You allow this Terran, this outsider, to name you as if it were sacred. Ziara stepped forward. Because it is sacred. Gasp. Protests. The high priest rose. The name must be received through sanctioned ritual, through bloodline alignment. It was. Through heartline resonance. Through unfiltered truth. She turned in a slow circle, letting every counselor see her clearly. The rite has awakened. The bond is real. Our own protocols confirm it. She paused. Voice steady. If your system fears truth, it was never built on strength. The chamber fell into stunned silence. One of the younger ministers, Lady Thenis, rose from her circle. She speaks as if the old rites mean something. Are we really to abandon centuries of hierarchy for emotion? Ziara's eyes sharpened. Not for emotion. For choice. Another voice cut in. Surprisingly deep. Mel. She chose. And so did he. It was Elder Marrik, blind, ancient, once thought senile. Now speaking with clarity not heard in decades. We always feared Terrans because they feel too deeply. But maybe, we feared what it made us remember. Murmurs now. Cracks in the wall. Her father rose, slow and heavy. His voice was colder than the void. You stand with him, he said. Then you fall with him. No, she said. And took a step back. I rise with him. She reached for Cade's hand. Their fingers laced, her pale blue skin glowing faintly, his rough, bruised hand grounding it like gravity. Gasp spread. Half of the nobles stood. Half remained seated. The chamber trembled, not physically but ideologically. A fracture. A new axis. Outside, in the orbital channels, diplomats from neutral systems began to receive encrypted updates. The bond had been confirmed. The daughter of House Vornix had chosen a Terran, and the throne had not stopped her. A ripple moved across star charts. Treaties reconsidered. Alliances reimagined. In the quiet after the storm, Cade whispered, You didn't have to choose me. Ziara turned her face to his. I didn't. I chose us. And for the first time since the war began, a future began to feel possible. The wind atop the high cliffs of Virex Prime was thin and clean, untouched by the recycled sterility of orbital rings. Stars shimmered like quiet witnesses above them, tens of thousands, each once a coordinate in a battle map. Now, just sky. Cade walked beside her in silence, boots crunching against the silver stone. The lights of the capital glittered far below like a nervous constellation. But up here, there was peace. Ziara wore no armor. No crown band. Only a flowing shawl of pale fabric that danced in the breeze, its color like starlight through glass. Her skin glowed faintly from the ritual traces still living in her blood, but her steps were her own. No guards. No chains. No titles. Just a woman who had chosen. They reached a ridge and paused. She turned to him, hair loose now, falling over her shoulders like a comet's tail. You never asked me what it meant, she said. What? My name. The true one. He smiled gently. Didn't think I had the right. Ziara stepped closer until their hands brushed again, like that first night in the ship, like the arena, like the moment she first remembered herself. You had the right before I did, she whispered. He looked at her quiet. She continued. Gieravel. It means the still flame. The one that doesn't flicker. The one that burns steady even in wind. She smiled, but there was weight in it. They tried to make me a torch. A symbol. Something bright to be consumed. But you reminded me I could be something that lasts. Kay didn't answer with words. He reached out and gently cupped her face, fingers warm against the pulse beneath her cheek. She leaned into it. And then, she said the last line as if delivering it not just to him, but to the stars themselves. Now I know my name. And you were the first to say it. Not with magic. Not with tech. But with your heart. A quiet chime from orbit pulsed overhead, the first notification of the new charter being signed. Vornix would no longer dictate alliances by blood alone. House ties would now permit non-native bonds, cross-cultural vows. Some would call it chaos. Others would call it peace. But up here, two souls simply stood. One reborn in name. The other no longer alone in the galaxy. And above them, stars shifted, ever so slightly. As if making room.